now we proceed with our first panel on new security architecture, the role of women in the new world. I would like to invite to this stage to join me Maria Pejnović-Burić, Secretary General of the Council of Europe, and Nicola Beer, Vice President of the European Parliament. Well, on February 24th of last year, as our president already mentioned, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, dramatically altering Europe's security and defense architecture and swiftly evolving into a global threat to democracy and freedom. Ukraine's heroic fight over the past year and a half has also altered the status quo, forcing the formation of a new security architecture, all the while reshaping international policies to reflect the strategic change from democratic support to democracy protection. Role of women leaders in particular, in these processes cannot be understated. As international female leadership continues to play a vital part in many of the global efforts essential to preserving and promoting democracy, peace, stability, and security. And with that, I would like to once again open this segue and also this part and thank the incredible speakers that are joining me up on this stage and start with the first question to you both. How has the role of women in security evolved over the past year and a half in particular, in your experience, and how has it been influenced by the ongoing geopolitical changes that we are observing today, not only in Ukraine, but also around the globe? I will start with Mrs. Beer.
Yes, thank you very much. And first, thank you really for joining this amazing conference. I think it's really important, Mrs. President, to have such initiative to make visible how many women are active in joining in a peaceful world. And maybe this is the most important, that the quality of female leadership, of a good leadership, because I think we really need good leadership, strong leadership, and this can be female and male, but that it is important that it is both, and that we work together for a world in peace. And that sometimes it brings us also in new roles, and we see it for the moment with the Ukrainian women, how they take up roles maybe they never had to plan to be, in the army, in the administration, in politics, leaving their homes, their beloved ones, leaving their children for some time behind, even in a very insecure situation. We see how strong women can fight for humanity, for rights of citizens. We see it with the Iranian women, we see it with the Afghani women, and they all need our solidarity, they all need our partnership, our support in their fight, and then everybody will join. We see, like in those citizenships in such societies, also men then join to fight also for rights of women, because they know that this is part of the quality of their life too, the quality of our societies. And we see how here in Georgia, the citizens really are fighting for their way, for their path to Europe, to the European Union. And I only can emphasize that also European Parliament, which I present today here, is very keen to have you all as partners. Partners for a better world, for a peaceful world, for a world which is respecting the rights of citizens, but also respecting the diversity we see in our societies. And maybe this is also the most important part of quality in leadership, that we respect this diversity, but we also embrace it, because diversity in unification, as we see it in European Union, this is what makes us strong, and this is what paves the way to peace and to a common society which is in the advantage of all of us.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President, for such important words and for the reminder. So I also wanted to ask a similar question to you, Madam Secretary General. How do you feel about how the role of women has evolved and the importance of female leadership, not just in the past years, but with what we've seen, the kind of leadership that we've seen coming from Ukrainian women, not only in high offices, but also on the battleground? If you would also kindly share your thoughts. Thank you.
Let me, from my start, first thank President Zurabishvili for this excellent event, and needless to say, to dedication to Ukraine and Ukrainian women, because at this moment I think they are at the front line, but they are also at the front stage, and we all should be at the front stage assisting them in their endeavor to fight for peace back again in Ukraine. Coming from the Council of Europe, actually, which is peace organization, and I must recall I was last week in London, and I had the pleasure to look into the original Treaty of London, which is Statute of the Council of Europe. And it was saying, when introduced, it was saying we established Council of Peace, so Council of Europe is Council of Peace, with hope and reason to have peace on European continent. And I was struck by the fact that we could say the same words today. We are still Council of Peace, and we need hope and reason and women to work on that. And an additional just a picture of that, if you look at pictures from the time and picture of the establishing Council of Europe, they are all men. No single woman, not among leaders, but no single woman in the room. So just to say as a general thing, how far we went with a lot of women in leadership positions. We are far from being balanced and reaching the goal, but we must work for that. So Council of Europe is a democratic security. Democratic security is important during the peacetime, and we work on that with 46 member states, but it's even more important in the wartime. So I can tell you, for instance, on the one example, how important the leadership, but this time really the leadership of Ukraine, including men and women equally, is that, for instance, our golden treaty for equality is Istanbul Convention that actually European Union joined last week. And Istanbul Convention, as many of you know, because you are knowledgeable women and know how much it's been exposed to all kinds, not anti-women only, but anti-right movements, was also difficult to get through the parliament in Ukraine before the war. But guess what? Last year, in July, Ukraine ratified Istanbul Convention. And this is to say that there is a great role for the Council of Europe to play for Ukraine, even during the war times. We are also, for instance, in our action plan in Ukraine, we are having, which we call resilience recovery and reconstruction. And among resilience measures, we have also the gender equality and fight against violence against women. Because if we don't fight against violence against women and domestic violence, we cannot empower women for further stages, which is to get to leadership positions, to get to different places. But I think unfortunate war times are also an opportunity to women to tap to full potential what they have. And I can name a number of great women that some are holding high-level positions, but some are really not known, but playing a great role on the ground during the war times. So I believe that for equality of women, the role of women during this wartime in Ukraine is important also to empower women and to move with gender equality issues in general. As I mentioned, Istanbul Convention was ratified during the worst, bombing time in Ukraine. So it's a great courage, it's a great encouragement to all of us who live peacetime elsewhere around Europe and the world. So I think, but there is another part, and you equally say. So one is the equality and leadership of women, but another is how much and unproportionately the women are tapped by the fact living in a conflict zone or living in war times. If you take refugees and asylum seekers, you know, the moment the war erupted 24th February last year, there were millions, but literally millions of Ukrainians fleeing the countries to the first neighbors. And in this respect, I must really give a great credit to all those who were receiving in days thousands and thousands, dozens of thousands, women and children. 80% of them were women and children. So I think what we should really do in this is to deal with this situation of those who are now migrants in the member states of the Council of Europe, or all around Europe now. We in the Council of Europe started immediately to assist them, to assist first IOM, to assist them immediately, but then also psychological aid to, you know, to prevent possible mistreatment, aid to give them the information in the language they understand, so that they get proper, and also assist in particular neighboring member states to deal with so many migrants that came and needed everything from shelter at the beginning and protection to education, social services and others. So actually in the wartime and in Ukraine and in the member states helping Ukraine, we have a lot to do and lots to do as women and for women.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned something that I also wanted to ask you both, I think more from a personal perspective on behalf of all of the women in this room. Obviously, women come across so many obstacles and challenges through life, not just in professional lives, but also in personal. But because you both have incredible stories to share, if you wouldn't mind briefly, instead of us sort of talking about just the positive, also telling us perhaps about some of the challenges that you had to overcome primarily because you were women in your positions, whether it was early on in your careers, later on, something that the women in this room can use and sort of take with them after this event so that it does not discourage them, but instead the challenges serve as encouragement, propelling them forward. Mrs. Beer, I will start with you, and then Ms. Bucic. Thank you.
Yes, this is a very personal question, but maybe I take it from that part. Just to believe in your own strengths and potential, and not to think you have to be perfect. Nobody is perfect. Everybody is learning on the way, and not waiting to be perfect or over-perfect to go ahead. Looking out for partners. There are a lot of partners, women as partners, but I always was also happy to have also male partners in my networks. Just to make what your heart is saying to you, because we all have something we are passionate for. We have a look on the world, how it could be better for the next generation, but also better in our time now. And just to look out how I could get it, and that it's important that somebody is starting. Because if everybody is waiting for somebody else, then we will never improve the situation. And so maybe to put all those points together, to be active, and if it's sometimes, as you were just mentioning, sometimes it looks as if it is a small point, but such small points all together, they give a bigger picture, and this is what then the world makes better. With all our emotions, with all our passion, with all our hopes, with all our dreams. But we have to have a dream to start to work for it, and we are not alone. So there are so many women here in this room. There are so many women and men outside. We all can work together to make our dreams become true.
Ms. Buric.
Well, I think I speak for myself, but I would guess many of you would agree with that. As women, we are really, except probably for a very young childhood, confronted with discrimination. I think in my case it was good to grow up, that I grew up with boys, and I was the youngest one, and I never accepted that I am less equal or less worthy, including the physical competition. So I'm saying that I believe this really gave me security in the future, where discrimination continued in one way or the other. Forms may change, but it exists even now. But I always, I think trust in yourself. And as the colleague was saying, don't think you should be perfect. You should be the best you are. I can tell you the example of when I competed for this post. I came the last one in the picture. I was meant to do something else with European Union, and last minute there was, why don't you run? I said, okay, but I see among the three of those who were already pledged for the post, that at least one already finished the whole competition. And I said, well, but first I have to face, I am prepared to lose. So I said, of course I am. What is democracy if you are not prepared to lose? So I can stand all, which will say, what you did, you think, also meaning probably you women, this is difficult times for men. So for that post, but you know how I went through the 6 months that ensued, working as minister and deputy prime minister of my country. I was not released of any duty I had to do, so I really was fully minister, fully deputy prime minister, and running for this post. And then I said, well, there were two stages, first with the governments and second with the parliament, the parliamentary assembly. And I said, well, what I want to have is to be the best what I can. Not perfect, but the best I can. Then whatever result comes, I will be sure that I was, the best what I can, and I got what it's really. So I passed the first, we were then two. And then in the second run, when I started to believe that I may win. The day before the voting was taking place, because someone came to me and said, there was a colleague, a man, who said, you are close to win. And then only I was going back to the hotel room in the afternoon and looking, really. So until the very last moment, and I think this is what democracy is about, you should not think you have to win. You should do everything to win. But I think being concentrated on your best self is the best you can do in any circumstances. Now, probably for the examples where I faced something which I could not counter at the moment, I think these things happened mostly when you are young and at the beginning, because then the environment shows it more. It's not that it disappears, but they show it more. So I was, in my early career, working for a non-governmental sector with the European movement in my country and Europe House Zagreb. And very often our management board were mainly men, and we were meeting, exchanging. It was very beginning of the independence of the country. There was a war. There were many things. So we were discussing, and what very often happened to me, so we were equally sharing ideas, I would say something, and they would not respond. Then 2 or 3 rounds later, someone else would say what I said, a man, and then they would all say, what a wonderful idea. so, so this is really where I understood, and then one, at the time, the chief of the trade unions in my country, he came to me and said, you know, Maria, if you were a man, you probably would already be a president. So this is to say, it does happen, it continues to happen, but I think coming to the positive example, be best of yourself, and one way or the other, the results do come, and you get to a position, no matter which position, which will allow you to do good for the humanity, because I think the major reason for fighting for equality is that we are more or less 50-50 in the world, and not tapping the potential that lies in this room and in many women around the world is losing a big potential. So this is a real, and probably here I also have example. I work in the private sector, and when first time in my life I was running for post of a high-level director, no one believed afterwards that I got it on, you know, honestly going for an interview, because at the time was the best company in the. So when I was for the interview, then I was asked all kind of questions and everything. And no one thought at that time, you know, that you can really I called actually the HR, and I said, I know that you are looking for this. I work now this and this and this. So if you are interested, I am there. And you wouldn't believe how it happened. I really experienced, and I got it. But what I got when I was working in that post, I could see the men coming for meetings, looking through me. I was 32, and thinking, oh, it's a woman, we will get easily with that. And I only thought, you only think that. So, yeah, being brave, being courageous, but being humble at the same time. I never, I think it's not aggressivity that helps. It's really self-assurance and knowing what you are worth of. And at the interview, the CEO told me, he said, you know what? That was 96. He said, 6 years ago, I was surrounded by men, and I thought I will always be surrounded. And now, when I look around me, I see many women, and he chosen me to be director of very high level. But I will tell you why. You know, when you work for the private, high competitive, this was pharmaceutical sector, what mattered was result. And I think my CEO at the time really understood the women are those who work very hard to get the result, probably harder than men, and we needed a result because the company was listed on London Stock Exchange, which was merciless. They just wanted a result. So, yes, we are brave, we are intelligent, but very often we have to work probably twice as harder as men.
That we do for sure. And I think you both touched on certain themes that keep coming up. Well, thank you. Oftentimes, perfection or the pursuit of perfection can be seen as a positive, but actually it can at times hold us back from being the best we can be. And also another sort of the word self-confidence and another word arrogance are oftentimes misinterpreted and at times also convoluted and confused, because just because a woman can be self-confident does not mean that she is necessarily arrogant, not at all, but that can sort of be an issue in and of itself and can be a challenge. So we have to constantly not just rewrite some of the rules, but also rewrite some of the terminology as women in the room. And speaking about women in the room, I wanted to ask you, since we only have just a few minutes left, because we hear so often these days that women deserve to and have to have the seat at the table, not just a seat, but the seat at the table. And obviously, I am very proud myself as a Georgian woman that the president of my country is a female, not because she's a great president, but because she is also a female that also gives women, I think, a sense of sort of understanding, of course, of the challenges that come with it, but also a sense of knowing that we can be capable of anything we really put our mind to. So thank you very much for that, Madam President. But women don't often get that seat at the table, and we have to fight, as you said, so much harder. What can be done, whether it's on a domestic level or a foreign policy level, just briefly, that you would recommend to not just a single country, but really anyone, to be able to make that policy recommendation, so to speak, practical and doable in a realistic manner that we can at least start thinking about? I'm not asking you for any policy changes right on the spot here, but any of your wisdom that you could share, both of you very briefly, would be much appreciated.
I think if we look on the results, it is important, as you already mentioned, to have all the potentials at the table and maybe also at the head of the table. And what women bring to the table is maybe also not only look on the quick wins, but on the long run, and to use all the strategies which then combine the potential of so many diverse persons around the table, to look on the result at the end, on the result of a society, on the result of a country, of a partnership. Because often if you only look on the quick run, then maybe you have the big news, you have the title of the newspaper this day, but at the end you lose the long run, you lose the battle, and you will not have the best of the results. And to make clear that it is important to do what is near to your heart. I always remember my mother when I came home with a project which was quite reasonable. And then she asked, okay, yes, could make sense, but is it really dear to your heart? I said, oh no, but it looks reasonable. No, do not go for that. If you are not passionate for it, you should go for what is dear to your heart. And it seems not so reasonable, maybe not so possible, not so easy. Yes, it can't be demanding. It can be demanding to work for it, but it is worth to do it. And this is what we have to make strong in our society, and especially strong in young women. It may be demanding, but if you really want it, you can get everything you want. And this is the message our society needs. In all the challenging time we have, and especially when I look on this country, the way to European Union, which for us, also as European Parliament, as see other colleagues here from European Parliament, we are looking for, and we know that you have some task to do. Just the European Commission said it, that a third is managed, a third is on a good way, and a third it's a lot of homework. It will be demanding, but I'm so sure you can get it if you really want it, if you bring all the potential of your society in common, if you bring all the women on the table, and you have a president who is also aware of that overcoming the difference in a society makes a country stronger. And I'm sure if we bring this potential on the table, then we will get everything we want.
Well, I will be more institutional now. I will just say there are many reasons and with the ways how we can tap more for the future. But one thing is, you were mentioning European Parliament. I think we wouldn't be represented in the parliaments, including European Parliament, without quota. Council of Europe was one of the first to ask for 40% at least women be presented on the list for elections. Although, you know, at my early age, I hated quotas because I always thought I can get something because of me being a human being and able person. But over years, I understood, yes, this needs to be, but needs to be because we have to change stereotypes and constructs. So I think we have to endeavor to have equally represented women and men in public at least in the public sector, but also in the private sector. There are some initiatives like 30% in the management board. So this is one thing. Another is having really strategies. I know that it sounds too technical, but it is not. Then from within, you have some of the things that actually answer your questions. I will tackle one, which is the role of men and boys. We just last month passed the recommendation to the governments to tap on that, because if we don't have men and boys on board with us, championing equality, our road to equality will be much longer. And actually, I think as much as inequality of women being underrepresented is tapping women, it's equally also tapping men and boys. So if we work parallel with many other policy areas on the role of men and boys, and as mothers, as sisters, as others, I think we also have the role to play. And coming back to personal, for instance, I always was telling my brother, I'm worthy as you are. Because when he was trying, you know, because he was elder, he was bigger and everything, I said, no, you know, probably you are stronger, I run faster. So, you know, I think we need really men and boys to be championing this. And there are excellent examples. I know the president of our former chair of the Committee of Ministers, Icelandic president, is one man who really champions that. And I'm sure there are, or there should be more around the world. So we should work on that.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But please thank me, help me thank, do not thank me, there's nothing to thank me for, but instead, please join me in thanking our fantastic panelists. Thank you so much.